Hello everyone and welcome back to Ruby Lessons on Codecademy. So in our last lesson we started looking at loops and iteration. We mainly looked at the while loop last time, and if you missed that video I would recommend looking at it because I talked about the basis of loops and why we use loops. So in the last lesson, as I said, we looked at the while loop. Today we're going to be looking at the for loop. So the difference is that, well, as it says here, the while loop is used when you don't know how many times you're going to be looping something, but you know when you need to stop, and that you need to stop when a certain condition is met. So, for example, when the input that you want from the user to enter is correct. So, for example, if you're expecting to get yes, you shouldn't get no. So until the user enters yes, you're looping to get their input. But if you only wanted to get yes, then you wouldn't do that, but it's just an example. So if you were expecting to get yes, you would loop until you get the correct input. But with a for loop, you do know how many times you'll be looping. But instead of just writing out 10 lines for something to be repeated 10 times, you can just do it in 3 lines, for example, like this. So let's see how to use a for loop correctly. So as it says here, in the case of you knowing how many times you're going to be looping, you will need to use a for loop. So again, it's a loop, but it's not a while loop. It functions differently. So our instructions, take a look at the example for loop in the editor. Can you guess what it does? Click Save and Submit Code to see it in action. So we have for num. So in this case, num is a variable that we are assigning now. For num in 1 through 10. Put, so it's going to output something. So it's going to output the value of num, and then it's going to end after it's finished looping, and this is probably going to be 10 times, or actually 9 times if it's exclusive. So if it's inclusive, 10 is going to be printed as well. If it's exclusive, it's going to be 9. Let's see. And it's actually exclusive, so it prints 1 to 9. It ignores the 10 basically. So let's actually talk about how this works. So as I mentioned, we have inclusive and exclusive ranges. You saw a bit of new syntax in the previous exercise. For num in 1 ellipsis 10, what this says to Ruby is for the variable num, which we are assigning now. So the variable num in this case is a new variable, and it is actually a variable that we are making as we are creating this for loop. In the range of 1 to 10, do the following. So, and in this case, the following was to print whatever num was. So as num took on the values of 1 through 10, one at a time, those values were printed to the console, as you saw before. So the reason why Ruby counted to 9 instead of 10 was because we used 3 dots in the range. This tells Ruby to exclude the final number in the count. So for num in 1 ellipsis 10 means go up to, but don't include 10. If we use 2 dots, however, this tells Ruby to include the highest number in the range. So, thinking back to my Python lessons, in Python you use for num in range, and then you give 2 values. The starting value is included, the last value is excluded, just like here. But if we use 2 dots, so let's see what our instructions are. It probably is just to do this, but to 15 apparently. So update the for loop in the editor in 2 ways. Make it print the numbers 1 to 15, including 15. Change it to use 2 dots instead of 3 dots. So, there are 2 ways to print the numbers 1 to 15. You can do it like this. So, as you can see, it prints 1 to 15. Or, you can also do it with an ellipsis there, or 3 dots, and 16 there. It's going to print them again to 16. I mean to 15, sorry. But it works differently because of what the example asks us to do. In this case, we will be using 2 dots and 15. And this is how to make your loop inclusive. 3 dots exclusive, 2 dots inclusive. I don't think that there's an easier way to remember it, you just have to remember it. In Python, I don't think that there is an inclusive way. So you just have to do one number above. So building your own. Let's make our for loop from scratch now. So now that we know how to actually do it. Good work, you're ready to build your very own for loop. So our instructions, write a for loop. So we have for that puts the numbers 1 to 20, including 20, using either 2 dots or 3 dots. Check hint if you need a syntax refresher. So we will use num again for num, and as I said before, num is a variable. You can also use a variable that's been assigned before. So let's actually do that. If I do this, for example, I am writing a new line for num in, and then we want 1. I will use this syntax now because we used 2 dot syntax in the previous one. I want to do puts and num, and we also need end at the end. I believe that was the syntax. Good. So let's explain why this works even though I've assigned it before. So as you can see, the capitalization of this variable and this variable are the exact same. But in this line is a different line from this line. Here I'm saying that num is equal to this value. In this line I'm saying make num equal to the first value of this thing that I am assigning it. So in this case the first value is 1. So make num equal to 1 and then print num. Then it repeats, make num equal to 2, the next one in line, and then it puts. Then make it to 3, and so on. But this line does a few things. So the first thing it does is makes num equal to the first value of this kind of list. So it's firstly going to be 1. And then it goes on to this. Then it makes it... So what we are doing with this loop, we could also do in the following lines. So num equals 1, puts num. Num equals 2, puts num. Num equals 3, puts num. But with a loop, it's much quicker. As you can see, we're only up to the number 3, but we've used 6 lines. We would need 40 lines to do this, but we've done it only in 3 lines. So it's much more efficient to use a loop, especially in this case. So that's the lesson for today. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments down below. I will answer them as soon as I can. If you enjoyed watching this video, then please give it a like, share and subscribe. If you didn't, then you know what to do. Give me a dislike and tell me in the comments how I can improve for next time. But until that next time, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.